Andrea, can you hear me? Or Eric?
Yeah, it sounds better now.
Okay. All right, well, then let's get started. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the November 16th edition of Queen City Toastmasters. In honor of tonight's theme from Eric, Music in Our Lives, today's fun fact for November 16th. On this day, 1959, the musical Sound of Music debuted on Broadway. That musical and that music and the movie has a lot of meaning for one of my wife's favorite films growing up. It was a present that I gave for one of our first anniversary DVD box set way back in 1959. And it's been a constant as a music in our household. So I will now turn it over to our presiding officer, our President David.
Again, for now, we're about to change. We're going to have our elections for next meeting, November 30th, next week. Currently, we have 2 positions available. We have 2 positions available. All positions are available, but you're allowed to challenge other people, so you can have one. The honor is going to be, he wants to become Sergeant Barnes. Jamie's going to become our treasurer, our secretary.
It's muffled again.
Sorry?
And they can't hear you.
You know, anybody else? Anyway, so positions that are available is VP of membership, and that's basically when you talk to people coming in, following them on emails, promoting the club. That's not a very time-consuming position. The other one is VP of public relations, where you're in charge of our Facebook, our Instagram, our LinkedIn, and just kind of do whatever you want, but it's just promoting the club. That's more time-consuming, but something out there. If you have want to challenge anybody or find out the position. But again, in 2 weeks, we're going to have a meeting and we need to have a forum. I think we have 28 members now. We have to have 14 members either on Zoom or in person to vote for going to an annual term, which is going to be 7-1 and 7-1 with the Toastmasters fiscal. And I know you're probably wondering why don't we go annual starting January 1st, but we're not allowed for Toastmaster International and our club. If it's going to be annual, it has to be 7-1, 7-1. That's why we're going to have that 6-month interim president. Nobody wants president. I do believe we have one yes. Approved. I think it's approved product. I do want to introduce yourself to the wife. I've attended virtually twice so far last year. Eric, who is an unofficial member guest. He's been coming here for years. Eric is with TMOD, New York, which is another club that I'm a member of. Thursday morning at 7 o'clock. As president, probably at school right now. All right, we have a lot to do tonight. We have 3 speakers. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our Toastmaster tonight. Welcome, Toastmaster. virtually everybody. And I think this theme tonight, because music is universal, something to be experienced basis throughout our entire lifetime. And through music, we celebrate, socialize, entertain. Music helps elevate our moods of happy, also helps us get through our struggles, our challenges in our life. Through music, we connect with ourselves, connect with other people, and most importantly, but if you think back, you've probably all been exposed to music. I remember being in grade school, learning music. Always seemed to be songs that we learned even before we got to school. Anybody name a song that they remember that we learned when we were young?
Hickory dickory dock.
Hickory dickory dock. That's a great one.
Mary had a little lamb.
Mary had a little lamb. So there's many ABC songs. We learned our ABC by song. And then do re mi, we learned notes.
Sound of music.
And the music, exactly. So we also often have music teachers. I remember my first music teacher back in day school. His name was Mr. Feinberg. No connection to this church. He was in his 70s. He was tall and thin. Had gray hair that was always too long, too messy. He had silver glasses, and he wore a gray suit. Basically means that his suit, glasses, and his hair all matched perfect. And I remember that he would walk into our classroom, carry his picks from the desk. He'd open it up, reach inside, and the only thing he had was he'd blow the pitch light and expect us to then sing along on key. And I was terrible singer, so I never really could sing. Like a lot of my friends, we all kind of made stuff up and laughed with it. My lesson. Over the years, I got into kind of music. Growing up, my mother played classical music, and on the weekend, she always had music based on Chopin. Really beautiful, relaxing. As I got into high school, I started to associate with other students and friends who liked music similar to my taste. I think that was very common in high school. And for me, that was mostly rock, like classical rock. So bands like Led Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones, Aerosmith were bands we listened to quite a bit. I grew up in Canada, and one of the best Canadian rock bands through the years was a band called Rush. And there were other bands we listened to called April Wine that weren't very well known in other parts of the world. When I started dating my wife, she introduced me to Motown. And Motown is fantastic music. It has great rhythm, great sounds, great beats. The coolest thing about Motown are the names of the groups. Does anybody want to volunteer or name a Motown group that they remember? Anybody online want to chime in? What? Diana Ross and the Supremes, right. Great name. Anybody else? James Brown? Okay, yep. Say that again? Jackson 5, yeah. Michael Jackson started off when he was really young. Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, Martha and the Vandellas, the Marvelettes, the Four Tops, and these were great names. The Temptations was the other group that I remember seeing live many, many years ago. So that's going to be the theme. I'm going to ask people to come up at different times and share with us some of their musical memories. And if anybody would like to volunteer to get us started off and just talk a little bit about something you remember from your music in your childhood, in day school and high school that had an impact on you, or even a favorite band that you had. Right now, we got a volunteer here. John, please welcome John. Thank you, sir.
So I'm always inspired by music. I incorporate music in everything. And I recall when I was in high school, we always had to have a pump up song. So I used to play football, and just like, I think it's one of the most popular pregame songs in the NFL, in fact, is Phil Collins' "In the Air Tonight." And we would always play that song. I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Now, it's not only awesome because I just sang it awesome, but it's awesome because of the drum beat, and it would really get us in the mode and inspire us to just give it our all on the field and in life, in fact.
Great. Thank you, Toastmaster John. And before I move on to the next part of our meeting, I just want to welcome another guest who joined us online. Is it Dana Beck? Dana, if you are there, you want to
Yeah.
unmute
Yeah.
and just say hello?
Hello, how are you? This is my first time here.
Great. Dana, welcome. And perhaps you can just take a minute and tell us about yourself and how you found Toastmasters.
Well, I found Toastmasters online. I'm working on, right before the pandemic hit, I was working on developing a speaking business, if you please, and kind of took a nosedive. And so I was interested in Toastmasters, just kind of get a sense and feel of what it's about. And my kid's sister, who lives in New York, is a big advocate of Toastmasters up there. So she told me about it. So I figured I would just check it out and just, see if I like it and whatnot.
Great. Thank you very much. Welcome to our meeting.
Thank you.
I would like to ask our grammarian Toastmaster, Dr. Harvey Tran, to come up and let us know what his role is this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Laxer. Now, this is not an NBA draft, but I still wear the hat. Good evening, fellow Toastmaster and honorable guests, both online and offline. Good evening. Great. So I'm going to be your grammarian for the day, and my task is to catch the filler that you guys will. Some of you will be saying, more or less. I already said some of the filler already in this speech, like and so And the other thing that I'd like to introduce to you all is the word of the day, and that is being bodacious. The reason I wear this hat, Second Alpha, is because when I first started to write for Second Alpha, I remember talking to Stuart. He, like last time, he said, "You don't have any technical expertise back in the days. How can you write for Second Alpha?" So back in the day, Stuart, you're absolutely correct. I had no skill in writing. Actually, English was one of my worst subject because it's my second language. But I went ahead and being bodacious and just go ahead and just do it and do it now. And then I start to write, and the more I write, the more I learn about the particular writing technique. I learn what works, what doesn't work, and from the various editor, then they start to teach me on writing properly, and here I am. And I grew my service to the best biotech service in Second Alpha since they circulate worldwide. So that is like the #1 biotech service, writing service worldwide, from someone who has no writing skill at all. And that's all being bold or bodacious. Now, the formal definition for that is audacious in a way considerable, admirable.
Thank you, Toastmaster Harvey. I'd now like to call upon Toastmaster Lynn, who is going to be our timer for this evening.
Good evening, Toastmasters and guests. I will be the timer for this evening. And what that means is I'll keep our speakers aware of how their speeches are being timed. So for example, if a speaker tonight has a speech that is 5 to 7 minutes, when we hit 5 minutes within his speech, or her speech, I will put on the green light. And once we get to 6 minutes, there'll be a yellow light. And then once we get to the 7-minute mark, there will be this red light. The speaker will have 30 seconds of grace period, either before the 5-minute mark or after the 7-minute mark. And the same theory applies to all of the other speeches. So we'll have table topics, which are 1 to 2 minutes long. And we'll do the same thing of once we hit a minute green light, a minute and a half yellow, and 2 minutes red. And then after each portion of each group of speeches, I will get up and give a timer's report to let everyone know what their final times were. That should be it.
Thank you, Toastmaster Lynn. I'd now like to call upon Toastmaster Lon, who will be our ballot counter this evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lan, and I'll be the ballot counter for tonight. My role is to basically to collect and tally the ballots for the best speaker, best evaluator, and the best table topic speaker. Oh, I forgot one thing. So at each table, you should see this ballots and brief evaluations. What you'll do is that you'll write down the best speaker, best evaluators, and the best table topic speakers. On the top, you'll write comments, things that they can improve on to each of the speakers. And at the very end, once you're done, go ahead and tear, not now, but later on, you'll tear this bottom half and I'll be going around and collecting them at the very end. Thank you.
Thank you, Toastmaster Lon. I think we can move on to the speakers portion of our evening for now. And with that, I'd like to ask everyone to welcome Toastmaster Stuart Bryson, who's going to speaking on a speech called Reading for Powerful Personal Change. Toastmaster Stuart.
Thank you, Eric. Fellow Toastmasters and honor guests, at risk of immediately losing your attention in what is only my second speech, I would like to talk to you tonight about a book that I recently read. By show of hands, can you tell me who here has read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Quite a few of you. Okay, great. This was recommended to me recently by a mentor, and it's the type of material that I'm normally very wary of. But I was surprised to find that in the end, it's actually impacted the way that I look at decision making. Do the next slide. I've listed the 7 habits here, but I'm only going to very briefly touch on a couple of them. I find it a little odd that the author decided to organize his material into 7 distinct categories and give the book this name, because I think it makes it sound far more gimmicky than it actually is, when in reality, there are probably hundreds of fairly complicated concepts within the book. One of the central concepts of the book is that everything that we do is tied to our character ethic. Character ethic is based on one's core values, the fundamental traits such as morality, justice, integrity. This is in contrast to personality ethic, which deals with practices and skills that affect public image and behaviors. And these tend to be more short-term solutions that are perhaps superficial. For example, has anyone here read the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie? So I'm not sure what your experience might be, but for me, that falls more in line with the personality ethic, in that I think a modern reader would look at those solutions or his advice as coming across as something that's maybe more of a quick fix or a band-aid solution. But what's important here is that all of the concepts discussed in the book are tied to character ethic. And so they're aligned with the deep fundamental roots, you know, the nuts and bolts of who we are. So the first habit that I would like to discuss is be proactive. This discusses how people respond to situations or questions or problems in either reactive or proactive ways. Those that are reactive tend to respond using behavior that is conditioned behavior. So they attribute their actions and decisions to external forces like their upbringing, their genetics, their physical environment. Whereas people who are proactive realize that they're able to choose how they respond to or how they behave to certain stimulus. And so they're consciously able to ensure that their actions are conducive to their core values and ultimately their success and happiness. I thought this quote summed it up beautifully. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. In reality, this can sometimes be quite difficult to do. For me personally, I try to expand that space by first taking in as much information about the stimulus as I possibly can, whether it be a problem that's come up at work or an issue in my personal relationships. I'm naturally a little awkward, and so my response isn't usually very elegant. However, I find now using this thought process that I'm often able to suggest a solution that addresses the very heart of the issue. And I've noticed that this realization has dramatically improved my public speaking my problem solving skills. The next section that I'd like to discuss is habit 4, which is think win-win. You've likely heard the term win-win be thrown around in a bunch of management textbooks, but I think the author here does an excellent job of explaining why this is a very important concept to us all. Win-win doesn't mean being nice to everyone. It's a way to approach interactions that truly values the well-being of both sides, of both parties. Many people base their self-worth on comparisons and competition, that if you win, someone else loses, that life is a zero-sum game. In reality, we're all part of an interdependent environment, and we can only succeed with the cooperation of others. The author states that there are 3 key traits necessary for sustainable win-win relationships, and those are integrity, stating your true values and commitments, maturity, expressing your ideas with courage and consideration for the thoughts and ideas of others, and finally, abundance mentality, believing that there is plenty for everyone. I've seen this illustrated in my own career. Part of what I do is to act as a broker for a transaction of financial assets. And I see where parties who always try to steamroll the counterparty often end up propagating a sense of distrust and ill feeling. And that ends up resulting in higher transaction costs and fewer deals getting done in the end. I would just like to quickly show you here, this is how the author brings all of the components of the book together in what is supposed to be an upwards spiral where each concept feeds into the next one. Finally, I would just like to share some final thoughts with you on the book. It actually took me a few months to get through it. I am typically a very slow reader, but sometimes the material is so heavy and dry, it can be textbook-like at times. It forces you to think very carefully about your behaviors and your motives. And sometimes after a hard day, it's really difficult to drag your own character through that level of self-examination. I would, however, encourage everyone to read this book. While it makes you face some very hard truths, I did feel at times a sense of relief when I felt like I now understood an important concept that I was previously very ignorant of. I thank you all for listening to my speech, and if any of you would like to discuss the book after the meeting, I'd be happy to. Thank you.
Thank you, Toastmaster Stewart. Please join me in welcoming our next speaker, Toastmaster Andrea. Her title is Mask Off. Andrea.
March 2020, I took off my mask. As the world was closing down, my world opened up. I'm one of 5 million people who suffer from an airborne nut and tree nut allergy. Can you imagine being enclosed in a box through life and feeling trapped everywhere you go? Every time I walk into a room, I have to scan everybody, not to see what style they're wearing or how they're styling their hair or what they're thinking, but what they're eating. Have you ever went down the grocery aisle and noticed how many items have nut products or tree nut products in them? They're in salads, sandwiches. I found out the other day they're in pie crust. I have had this allergy for most of my life, but since 2008, I have had to wear a mask. So when my friends come to me and they complain about wearing this mask and literally dying not to wear it, I laugh. I've been wearing masks forever. I remember a time in 2019 where I was sitting in the airport, surrounded by 4 sheriffs and 2 sniffing dogs. Kids were crying and pointing at me. People were rolling their eyes. One man even told me, "Did you get enough attention?" Please don't be insensitive to others, judging books by their covers and not looking within to see what is really going on. Now, ironically, with this allergy, kids are treated with care. They have tables where nut-free tables. There's no nut-free table at my job. I had to speak up. That has not always went well. I've had people sneak items into my office. I've had people wait until I was in a room such as this, and they had Snickers. And imagine if all of you had a Snickers bar right now, how I would feel. I can tell you, I totally freaked out. It was like somebody took a gun to my head and they told me to calm down. Just stay calm. I'm not going to shoot you. All I'm going to do is poison you right now. All I had time to do was grab my phone and my EpiPen and run to safety. My safety, I thought, was my supervisor. The next day, I got wrote up for being unprofessional. Once again, think before you judge someone else. There are 2% of the children of this world who suffer from this allergy and 1% of adults who suffer from this allergy. Yes, they tried to re-emerge me with the allergen. And of course, I'm that 1% that broke out from that too. They told me that it was an 8-ounce glass of water and just a drop of the allergen in there. Now, I can't say I just freaked out because I had hives all over my body. My doctor soon said, "We're not doing this anymore." Again, when someone says they have an allergy to something, it doesn't mean that they just have a preference not to eat it. They literally can be harmed. So I carry around Benadryl in this yellow ugly pen. This thing hurts. It hurts really, really bad. So I try not to use this pen as much as possible. So every time I see somebody wear their mask in a room, I get excited because before 2019, as of 2019, I had shut down. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't do anything because I was living in fear. I no longer live in fear because now I am using my voice. And I became the chocolate butterfly to help somebody else break free of their fear. Some people call it false evidence appearing real, but mine was real. The fear of not knowing what each of you have had to eat today, the fear of not knowing what that sound. To some, it should bring much joy, but to me, it brings fear. So I thank you today for putting on your mask. And when my coworkers say, I don't want to wear a mask, and they're losing their jobs and their family members and their lives, I don't laugh because I understand the feeling of standing out while everybody else is looking normal. I want you to remember that I appreciate each and every one of you, especially my Queen City Toastmasters Club, because our snacks are all nut free. And that was when I knew that this was the place for me. I want you to take off your mask of fear, not this piece of cloth, but just like the COVID virus, it lives in the air for 3 hours. So if you had nuts and you're around me, please don't breathe on me because it causes me to take my EpiPen and Benadryl. And so with that, I want you to break free and become the people that God called you to be. What is it that you're afraid of today? What is it that is keeping you from speaking up? What is it that is keeping you from living your dreams? False evidence appearing real, it's real. But I want you to internalize that, face your fears, and live on purpose. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you, Toastmaster Andrea. Our next speaker is working on his presentation mastery pathway. And tonight he's going to present his evaluation and feedback, first of 2 speeches. Please join me in welcoming Jamie Richardson for a speech titled Game Night is Back.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, and greetings, fellow Toastmasters and guests. I'd like to start with a question. So if folks can please raise your hand if you played board games as a child. All right. Please keep those hands up, everyone. And then keep them up if you still play a board game at least once a month. All right. Most of the hands in the room for those on Zoom went down. That's no surprise. The board game industry has had a tough couple of decades. Think about the rise of cable TV. Think about video games, social media. All of those have made for a very challenging dynamic for board games. But I'm here to tell you that it is actually a golden age for gaming. If you can go to the next slide. I'm going to touch on 3 things today, some of the trends that are driving this surge in popularity in gaming. We'll talk about some of the benefits of board games, both in terms of mental as well as psychological benefits. And then I want to cover some of the different categories of games that are out there. I'm positive that we can find a game and a style of game that fits each and every one of you out there. Let's start with some of the industry trends, if we can go to the next page. So COVID has been pretty darn destructive to just about every industry out there, except for board games. If someone was to think about or ask the question of what is the core demographic of board games, some bad jokes out there would probably say folks that never leave the house. And so quarantining has actually been really beneficial for board games and a surge of popularity, especially among adults. If you look at the first chart here, this shows the total global sales for board games and puzzles, coincidentally enough. In 2019 was about 10.4 billion. It's projected to grow to 12.1 billion by 2021, a pretty healthy growth rate for a very challenging economy. Compare and contrast that to the US movie box office ticket sales. In 2019, movies were projected to be at 11.5 billion, ahead of board games. Now fast forward to 2021, not even going to make 4 billion. Huge catastrophic loss in the movie box office. But it's not just a captive audience. It's actually a renaissance that's going on in the types of games, the imagination, the creativity that is out there, especially in what's called the independent gaming sector. And so one of the catalysts for that growth is the platform Kickstarter. Are people familiar with Kickstarter? Okay, it helps fund projects for individuals and especially for independent game creators. Has anyone played the game Cards Against Humanity? A few people out there. It's a social game, usually preys on our worst angels in terms of jokes that we might make. But that actually got its start in Kickstarter. If you can see over on the very far left, that bubble, way back in 2010, Kickstarter was one of 19 games funded on that platform. It got pledges of $15,000. Fast forward to 2020 on Kickstarter, over 3,000 games have been successfully funded on that platform. Some of them in excess of $10 million. So if some of you out there are still thinking of board games as Connect 4, Chutes and Ladders, sorry, I'm here to tell you that that the gaming world has exploded. There's a whole new world of games out there for all of you to discover. Next page. But in addition to fun, games can actually be good for us. So if you're a parent like me, introducing your kids to games at an early age can be incredibly beneficial for building what is called executive function. That is the skill sets associated with memory for organizational and structural thinking for adaptive and creative learning. As we age, games can be very helpful in terms of maintaining mental acuity and agility, and games can bring us together. Studies have showed that families that play board games on a regular basis feel closer together. They feel happier. In contrast to some of the studies out there related to use of screens, where people report feeling lonely and low self-esteem. So board games can be a really powerful way for you to galvanize some of the better parts of your mental health. Next slide. All right, so a wide variety of games out there, clear benefits. Let's talk about some of the different categories so we can ideally find a perfect fit for each and every one of you. The first category is strategy games. This is one that many people are familiar with. It's also one of the oldest. You could put chess in this category. It's also my favorite category. And what I love about it is that it's continued to evolve as a category. So I think, Eric, maybe in one of our previous Toastmaster meetings, you actually highlighted Risk as one of the games that you played growing up. Well, that whole genre of games has now become much more exciting because now when you go out and play, each and every time you play the game, it can be different. That's how they're starting to design the games. It's not one path, everyone racing to be the first one to the end of the board. They've also become more balanced. So it's more fun and engaging all the way through the end of the game. It's not one person out front who destroys everybody else and everybody gets discouraged early on. The other thing I like about this category is that there's multiple ways to win. You're constantly having to adapt and respond to not only the other players in the game, but the resources you have and the cards you have. And this has been something that I've really enjoyed bringing my kids into, is seeing how they think strategically. Go to the next page. The next category is cooperative games. This is a category that didn't even exist when I was a kid. And what I love about this genre is that it takes all the players and puts them on the same team competing against the game itself. And so especially if you have kids, this is a great way to get them into gaming because it teaches the benefits of teamwork, and it encourages them to reflect and value different skill sets and different talents across the other players in the game. Basically, they have to learn that by working together, they can accomplish something that they can't do so individually. It also builds communication skills, and everyone stays in the game. If everyone wins together and everyone loses together, no one gets eliminated early and gets their feeling hurt and have to twiddle their thumbs for the next hour. All right, next slide. Quick games. This one should be obvious. What I love about this, and these are some of my favorite games out there right now, they're quick. They take 10 to 15 minutes. So if you haven't played games in a long time, this is a great way to ease back into it because it's not a huge commitment for an entire evening home. They're also really easy to learn. So you're not having to spend 30 minutes teaching everybody the instructions. You can get everybody up and playing within 5 to 10 minutes. They're also designed to be games that more than 4 people can play. So they're a great social activity as well. Next page. All right, and the last one that I want to cover, which we started with, Cards Against Humanity, are the social category. And these have become increasingly popular because of the adult segment of the population. You go to parties, you might see these games being played. They're a great icebreaker. They're a great way to get people feeling comfortable. They often go with alcohol. I've experienced or seen, but they also teach some great skills. They teach communication, they teach humor, they teach presentation skills. And there's actually a game on here that you can see over on the bottom right called Snake Oil. And the premise of this entire game is how to give a presentation or a pitch for an imaginary product. And so for one of our future Toastmaster social events, it may be a good opportunity for us to explore that. All right, last slide, a challenge for all of you. Pick one night, turn off the screens, gather the family, invite over friends, and have a game night. You can go and look at the favorite game in the back of the closet, or better yet, you can pull out a new game, one of the award-winning games that are out there. I guarantee you'll have fun. You may rekindle that competitive fire within, and you may build relationships. Thank you, and back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Toastmaster Jamie. I would now like to call upon Toastmaster Lynn for our timers report.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. So our speakers' times were Stuart, 7 minutes and 25 seconds, Andrea, 7 minutes and 21 seconds, and Jamie, 8 minutes and 8 seconds.
Thank you. Just want to take a 2-minute interlude here and come back to our musical theme. Hearing music is great. Seeing people perform is even more exciting. And I have a cousin who really was a Bruce Springsteen fan. He saw Bruce Springsteen about 30 times and used to follow him from city to city. The best concert I ever attended was the Rolling Stones when I was 17, and that was really incredible. Does anybody want to come up and share any musical story, possibly about having gone to a concert at some point that they enjoyed? Yes, Andrea, Toastmaster Andrea.
For those who don't know, I'm from Motown. So I grew up hearing all of the beautiful sounds of music. I grew up knowing that Aretha Franklin was my legacy. I grew up knowing, just seeing everybody, the Temptations, everybody, the new Temptations, because I'm not that old. But I do remember my first concert. My first concert that I saw in person was Prince. It was my dream. I got to see him, and all I remember is Purple Rain, Purple Rain. So I enjoy music. Music is my life. So ironically, I didn't sing this time, but you gave me the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Toastmaster Andrea. I would now like to call upon Toastmaster Connor, who is our table topics master of the evening. Connor.
Thank you, Toastmaster Eric Laxer. My name is Connor Waite, and I'll be the table topics master for tonight. Table topics is an opportunity for members and guests to speak impromptu. So today I'll be asking 3 questions because we had 3 speakers, so we're gonna try and keep it on time. There are no right or wrong answers. These are all open-ended questions. And after the speeches, I'll ask for the timers report and for the ballots to be collected. Without further ado, can I have a volunteer? Dr. Harvey Tran. Dr. Harvey Tran, what musical artist do you look up to the most and why?
Okay. Thank you, Toastmaster Connor. I know in COVID time, it's just that little, that little knuckle bump. So my favorite artist is actually what you do not. It's It's contrary to what you probably think is my favorite artist, but it's actually Jay-Z. Now, I'm not into all the hip hop, all the rap and the stuff, because every time when I heard rap, it's always somebody getting shot or somebody getting laid. And that's not what I'm into. I'm into building better society. Now, now, truth be told, a lot of the rapper, a lot of the artists, they don't have the business skill. But Jay-Z, he has the right business skill, the right acumen. He's so intelligent because he's leveraging on his platform, his millions of followers to launch his company, to transform himself into a multi-billionaire. And as you all can see, money talk and bullshit walk. He has the money to give back to the community. And then through that, he can transform and improve the African-American community. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Toastmaster Dr. Harvey. Do I have another volunteer? All right. Cameron, if you could be a part of any band or musical group, which group would it be and why?
All right, great question. Well, if you look back through the history of time, which ones had the biggest influence? I wasn't a big Beatles fan, but my wife is 34 years old. The Beatles were done by the time she was even thought of, but that's the kind of impact they have. What's the saying? Legends never die, right? So just think about the impact they have. And like Dr. Tran said, it's all about getting laid sometimes. I guarantee you, if you were a part of the Beatles, you had no lack in that department. So there's no telling what kind of partying they did. Plus, they came up through the 60s. Again, I'm not a huge Beatles fan, but when Connor asked me this question, that's the first thing that pops in my mind is the Beatles, just that brand, just the brand. And then look at the spinoff that it created. You had, obviously, tragically, John Lennon died due to a homicide, but Paul McCartney, look at what he's done. Look at Ringo. Look at George Harrison. I'm not even a Beatles fan. I know all their names. So just that brand, I don't know. I feel like that would be a good one. But for me, my personal favorite is Aerosmith. They were the first concert I ever saw. September 9th, 2001. I saw them in concert right here in Charlotte. Why do I remember that date? Because my mom let me stay out of school the very next day. My first day back at school was a date of September 11th, 2001. So I always remember my first concert, and I always link those two together. So Aerosmith was always my favorite because Joe Perry can really kill a guitar. I'm a big guitar buff. So not bands, but like individual role models for me are like the Jimi Hendrix of the world. Another role model that I saw that I'm not a huge fan, I got to go to Jamaica for my 3-year wedding anniversary. And Bob Marley to those people is their savior. I mean, he is Jesus to them. I mean, they could listen to Bob Marley, the same 7 songs for 42 days in a row and never get tired of. I mean, that's what Bob Marley means to those people. So just the influence that he's had is remarkable.
Thank you, Toastmaster Cameron. Do we have any other volunteers? Okay, Brittany, can you give us a story about the most distinct memory that you have that comes from music?
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. Most distinct memory I have, I think a good go-to would be my very first concert. So my first concert was NSYNC. That should tell you a lot about me, that I'm an NSYNC fan, not a Backstreet Boys fan. And my sister, I was the little sister at the time, and my big sister let me tag along with her and all of her friends, which was very kind. I think I was an enjoyable little sister. I don't think I was bratty by any means, but they were great. They were very welcoming and inclusive. Had a lot of fun. They even let me create a t-shirt with them. The problem was there was already 5 friends and there's 5 letters in NSYNC. So they let me be the asterisk between the N and the sync. So nothing like feeling like a sixth wheel, but all in all, it was a great time. And it sort of kickstarted my love of NSYNC and all things boy bands.
Thank you, Toastmaster Brittany. All right, with that being said, can I call a timers report?
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. Dr. Tran spoke for 1 minute and 12 seconds, Cameron for 2 minutes and 12 seconds, and Brittany for 58 minutes, or 58 seconds, sorry. So I believe they all qualify.
Thank you. And can I call back for the Toastmaster, Eric Laxer?
Thank you, Toastmaster Connor. I would now like to call upon our general evaluator, Toastmaster Cameron.
All right, well, now we get into the portion of our meeting that has, in my opinion, the most bang for the buck. This is the evaluations. This is why we're here. We're all here to get better. And what better way to get better than to hear feedback from our peers? So we had 3 wonderful speakers tonight. We're going to have 3 wonderful evaluations. And to kick us off, my man John, who sings a cappella, is going to evaluate Stuart. Please welcome John.
Thank you, Cameron. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and honored guests. I had the distinct pleasure of evaluating Stuart tonight. Stuart is giving his second speech in his Pathways, and it's called the Evaluate and Feedback speech. So for those that aren't aware, I'll be providing some feedback that hopefully Stuart can then incorporate into his next speech. But when I think about evaluation in general, I look at 3 things. I first think of content. Was it interesting? Was it organized? I think about your verbal presentation. Did it have the right tone and speed and vocal variety, and was it clear? Then I think about the non-presentation or the nonverbal skills, such as your eye contact or stage presence. Let's first talk about what I thought you did well. Now, I'm a personal lover of self-help, so you caught my attention right away. I love the topic, and I think in some ways, all of us are here for that very thing, to improve ourselves. So I love the content. I love the how you broke it down. You talked about the character versus the personality. You talked about being proactive and win-win as your kind of your key focuses of the 7 habits that you wanted to focus on. Before tonight's speech, you talked about wanting to really focus on your vocal variety or your vocal clarity, and I thought you did just that. We all know the elephant in the room. You have a strong accent, and to address it, you need to slow down. You need to pronunciate so that everyone can hear you and follow along. And I thought you made a conscious effort, and there was a notable improvement since the last time I saw you. The second thing I think you did well is that you were very poised. For only your second speech, people up here can have their, certain physical traits, their pulled back shoulders, spoken in a very smooth tone. And I thought from a confidence standpoint, confidence makes you more believable. And I thought you were very confident and poised in that regard. I thought you made good use of engaging the crowd. You asked questions about various books people have read, and then you also use visual aids to aid in your content. Here's where I would offer some suggestions for improvement. Let's first talk about content. I love the content, but I always like to follow the rule of say what you're going to say it, and then repeat it. Right. So maybe one thing you could have done and said, okay, I read this book about the 7 successful habits. I'm covering 3. Here are the 3 I'm covering today. And then perhaps to add on to that, what you could do is to really capture our attention, utilize a story for each one. Some story that helps really drive home the point that they're trying to make in the book, a situation where you had a win-win or what have you in each of those various content. Right. And then finally, introduce a little more vocal variety. You talked about, you improved your speed, you improved your clarity, just include a few inflections. That also helps it make it more interesting. Overall, I thought you did notably better since their last speech, and I look forward to hearing more of them.
Thank you, John. All right, next up to evaluate Toastmaster Andrea will be Toastmaster Sean. Please welcome Sean.
Thank you, Toastmaster Cameron. Honored guest, fellow Toastmasters, especially Andrea. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the speech that you gave. It takes a lot of courage for someone to open up. So thank you for opening up and telling us a little bit about yourself and the allergent and the story that you had. There's a few things that I do look at. I look at the structure. I look at vocal variety, as John had mentioned as well. I have somewhat follow up with the same type of looks, or not looks, but the same type of gestures. And one thing I wanted to mention, one thing I saw when I first saw you come up here is the amount of the time that you took. You weren't rushed to come up here. You own the stage. And that's what I really liked. As you are approaching yourself over here, you're very calm, you're very slow, and then you took off your mask and you started into your speech. I really like that. I think it grabbed everybody when you started that. Your ability to storytell was very impressive. I think there's a lot to be learned from there. I like your vocal variety. Your vocal variety, I was looking at cons. I didn't find too much, and I looked at vocal variety first. I first thought that maybe more vocal variety, more up and down would be good. However, I think for the message that you're trying to draw, I don't think that was necessary. The vocal variety that you had, the tone that you have was sufficient for the speech that you gave. So I think not being bodacious was actually a beneficial to your speech. The other thing that I mentioned or I saw was again, I was trying to think of more ways for you to improve, but I didn't find much. I was first thinking, would you walked around more? But then I thought to myself, no. I think the way that you stood here was fine because you could have had notes as well. And yes. In addition to that, I liked your ability to just take authority of the room that we have here. There wasn't any pauses. You didn't speak fast. I like the fact that you talk slowly because we were able to digest the information that you were giving us. So that was a big pro. In conclusion, you even were able to provide us with the conclusion at the end for us to look beyond the mask based off of the story that you just gave. So I really appreciate your speech. There was a lot that I learned. I was taking a lot of notes and I'm looking at my notebook right now and there's a lot, I'm glancing at it. And I appreciate your speech and I'm looking forward to more of the speeches that you have. Thank you very much. Toastmaster Cameron.
Thank you, Toastmaster Sean. All right, last and certainly not least, evaluating our third speaker, Jamie, will be Dr. Harvey Tran. Please welcome Dr. Harvey.
Thank you, Toastmaster Cameron. So, Jamie, in my style, of all the mentee that I have, they're great people, accomplished professional, even executive. But none of them is able to last with me for 3 months because I always slam them, shred them to pieces to rebuild them. But this is Toastmaster, so I'll take a different approach. So, Jamie, I thought that you start off your speech beautifully by asking the audience the question to get the engagement, because without engaging the audience, the speech will be too boring. Your speech was not boring at all. You have great engagement in eyes to eyes with the audience. I remember you look at Sean and then look at my area right there, that corner, and then also that corner. So very important to engage the whole audience. And then your clarity was just superb, 5 out of 5. The way you pronounced every single word was perfectly, very clear, and I was able to completely understand what you said. Your gesture was excellent. when you say certain word, you project that with your gesture as well. As you all can see, in communication, you have verbal and also physical communication. Jamie did excellent on both front, verbal and also physical communication. The more, this is several speeches that I heard from you already. Every single time that I heard you, you improve. You show more confidence, more assertiveness. Every single time, your gesture, and also I love how you use variety of word. Your word choice is excellent. That tells me that you've read a lot. You've read a lot and you know a lot of vocabulary. So as an audience, as someone who listened to you, it helped me to learn more vocabulary as well. Now, if there's one thing that I would encourage you, you don't have to. People have different speaking style, different speaking skill. For me, I like to hammer the table, you know. In the future, when I speak, I'll make sure I run across the stage like Steve Ballmer. He's just running off the stage like developer, to get the call to action to honor the developer, because that's Microsoft. They're very important. So maybe that is something I know I can imagine is probably outside of your comfort zone, but consider that if you add some of that spice to it, then that part of whatever you're cooking is going to be perfect. 100% over 100%. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Harvey. All right. Can I ask Toastmaster Lynn for a timers report for our evaluators?
Thank you, Toastmaster Cameron. John spoke for 3 minutes and 29 seconds, Sean for 2 minutes and 54 seconds, and Dr. Harvey for 2 minutes and 31 seconds. So everyone qualifies.
Thank you, Toastmaster Lynn. And our grammarian, is that Dr. Harvey as well? Can you give us a grammarian report, please, sir? If you feel like you're loud enough, brother, you can do your thing from back there, up here, wherever you want. Thank you, Dr. Harvey. Well, overall, we had a great meeting. I always love to look at the agenda and see three speakers, because that means we had a full agenda of speeches signed up for the evening. So awesome job with that. We started on time, which is always great. So that's always just my challenge is, you know, try to be, we start at 6:30. So try to be here no later than 6:25 if you can, because after the meeting starts, that door is loud. Somebody walks through, attention automatically goes back to the door. So it's just rude to whoever's up here. So just try to be here on time if you can. I was in the bathroom, so that's shame on my part, but do we not do the Pledge of Allegiance anymore, or is that no, that's not what, okay. All right. No. All right. We must have voted on that when I wasn't here. Anyway, Toastmaster Eric, was this your first time doing the Toastmaster? Wow, dude. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, applause. How many other people that had a role was their first time? Raise your hand. Wow, I had a lot of first timers, and I'm a first timer too in this role. So applause for all the first timers. I love the theme with music, and I loved the word of the day. So I'll put them together real quick. So I'm a big country music fan. I know it's a big shocker to you all, but Hank Williams Jr. was one that I failed to mention earlier, who was a staple in my childhood, and his nickname was Bodacious. So there's me bringing it all together. All right. And what I also love seeing is that Dr. Harvey was the only person that had multiple roles. So when we have a complete meeting, when there's a different person for every single role, that is awesome. And Dr. Harvey had, just because he, is a go-getter and a show-off, he had to have 2 roles. So, but he was the only one. Everybody else, pitched in, and David does a great job of really pestering us the day of the meeting to sign up for roles. So thank you for doing that, because he got me roped in at, 2:00 this afternoon. So here I am. We had 3 great speakers. Stuart, I really love that book, so that one resonates well with me. Andrea, very powerful message. Loved it. And I love the challenge that you gave to all of us. And Jamie, accept your challenge. I'll get back to game night. And yes, game nights are always more fun with alcohol. So, and we had 2 PowerPoint presentations, which is the first for me. I don't remember the last time we had 1, much less 2 in one night. So that was awesome. So again, I'm a big stickler for time, so I'm not going to bore you all night, but overall great meeting. My challenge is for everybody to be back here in 2 weeks and have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Toastmaster Eric.
Thank you very much, Toastmaster Cameron. I would now like to call upon Toastmaster Lon to give us the results of the ballot count.
For the table topics, the best table topics for tonight goes to Cameron. And the best evaluator for tonight goes to John. And drum roll for the best speaker for tonight. Ooh, Andrea. Back to you, Toastmaster.
Thank you, Toastmaster Lon. I would like to remind everybody to sign up for future roles. That's on the list of things to do as Toastmaster, in case you're wondering. And I know we're running late. I'm just going to end off with a fun fact here. Music videos have played a huge part in the history of music. Does anybody know what the date was that MTV came out? August 1st, 1981. Music videos today are all on YouTube. Does anybody know what the #1 viewed music video on YouTube is right now? Andrea? Say again? It's not Thriller? No? No, not Gangnam Style? Does anybody have little kids? So it was, hang on, we'll get to you in 1 sec. It was Despacito. And last year there was a major turn, and the #1 viewed video has been viewed almost 10 billion times. Toastmaster Harvey? That's what it is. That's right, yes. Thank you, everybody. With that, I will return the meeting back to our presiding officer, President Toastmaster David Jones.
Thank you, Toastmaster Eric. You did a great job. I appreciate it. And I just wanted to go talk to our guests real quick. We had one that I didn't get to talk to. Just wanted to see if you could introduce yourself and what you thought about the meeting.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kiara Perry. I'm originally from Birmingham, Alabama, but I went to Queen's University in Charlotte. I'm looking to relocate, and I found you guys up on the internet, and I thought, what better way to get back acclimated with the city than to stop by and become familiar with everybody and some of the things happening in the Queen City. So it's my pleasure to be here. I am active with the Toastmasters in Birmingham, Alabama, with the city of Birmingham for City Hall. So we do a lot of things with the mayor's office and the city council. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to coming back every time I come to town. Again, I'm looking to relocate, so I'll be coming back over the next months, and I look to stay connected. Thank you.
Appreciate it. And then you too, just any feedback on the meeting tonight? Yeah.
So I thought it was really good again this week. It was good to hear everybody's stories, and yeah, I always get something from our meetings I did last week, and definitely did this week. So thanks everybody for presenting.
Finally, any feedback, any thoughts about the meeting?
Oh, I don't know if I have any perspectives that would benefit you all. Just want to say that everyone here is very charismatic that spoke tonight. I look forward to learning from you all and hopefully emulating your impressive qualities.
Thank you much. Appreciate it. They were all great speeches tonight, and about everything was great tonight. I think it's one of our better meetings, and I'm not just saying that, it's true. So we are running a little late, so I wanted to say good night to everybody, and don't forget next week, no meeting because it's Thanksgiving, and then the week after we'll have our election. So hopefully we'll see you on the 30th. So good night, everyone.